Perfect. Thank you so much. And so first off, I want to say thank you guys for having me and reaching out with some interest in Builder and what we're doing with this. We're kind of doing a lot of really cool development work. So in the initial slide, you have me listed as Trendline. I actually switched positions over to Avigate, which is a little bit more development centered, which is really kind of cool. So a little bit about myself. I've been in Marketing Cloud for 5 years now, just maybe a little bit over. Um, in the last couple of years, I've really gone headfirst into development kind of stuff. So this is where I kind of landed. Builder is kind of a passion project for me. And I'm really, really fortunate that my company gets to, let me do that kind of work, on the clocks and provide this kind of stuff to the community. So first off, what is Builder? So Builder's open source, so you can go in, you can see the code base, you can see everything that we're doing. Um, what it aims to do is kind of make a better Marketing Cloud workflow. So if you're in Marketing Cloud and you're in Content Builder, if you are working in your local text editor, you're very familiar with the copy and paste every single time you need to make an update if you work in your text editor, or you're kind of in the web text editor that Marketing Cloud provides. Which for me personally, I was never a big fan of, because I have my text editor set up exactly how I wanted to, and I'm very comfortable with it. So going to a web-based editor was not really conducive to my development style. So Builder basically looks at a Git type workflow where you have the ability to pull and clone assets from GitHub, Bitbucket, so forth, make your updates, add it to version control, and you can do all that from the command line. What Builder is aiming to do is essentially mimic that for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So you're able to work on your assets locally, pull files from Marketing Cloud, save them on your local machine, push them to a Git version control, could be any one that you use, does not matter. Make your updates and push it back into Marketing Cloud without having to leave your text editor, and without having to copy and paste back into Marketing Cloud. So what it's doing again is that connection between your local computer, where you're comfortable, where you're most efficient, to Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And the cool thing about it is that one of the big things that I've always had issues with, that my teammates have always had issues with, any developer working in Marketing Cloud has had issues with, is working that version control angle is not easy. It's rather cumbersome, actually, because you have to make sure you know what version is most up to date, where you've made changes. The whole copy and paste workflow is just really clunky. The other really cool thing about it is that you're able to make mass edits locally and push them all to Marketing Cloud, essentially in one command. So that's kind of what Builder is today. And we've got a lot of stuff on the roadmap as well. So talking use cases, and please feel free to reach out in the chat if you guys have questions about anything that I'm going over or the use cases that I'm covering. Or if you're curious if you have a use case that it could work for. So one of the use cases that we've gone over is having that workflow outside of Marketing Cloud where you work amongst the team, having that inconsistency between who's working on what, overwriting copy or code, and just not being confident of who's made an update, where that update has been made, has it made its way to Marketing Cloud. So by taking it from a fairly analog workflow where you have to copy and paste everything, you let Builder do kind of the heavy lifting, and you let Builder do the version control aspect of it. Um, and again, it doesn't care what your external workflow is, as long as you have access to those files locally. Doesn't even have to be from a Get provider. Um, you can work on it locally and keep track of everything with that version control and push it into Marketing Cloud from one area. Um, so then another, again, going off of that version controlling aspect of it, your typical workflow is you either update Marketing Cloud content, open every single content block or Automation Studio dependency. You have to create the files for each piece manually within the interface. You have to copy and paste everything. To do the version control stuff, you have to create your repository, do the Git workflow as well. And then for every change, remember every one of those steps every time an update is made. With Builder, you tie it directly to a Git repository, which I'll show you in a demo. You clone that to your local. You can either clone a project directly from Marketing Cloud that exists, or initiate one with Builder. And then you can run all 5 of these commands in succession, saying, add all your files to the Builder's backend stash, push everything to your Marketing Cloud instance, and then turn right around and push everything that you've just updated and tested into your Git version control, all in one breath. So one of the future feature highlights that I wanted to include in this, and I know, Matt, you have actually done a little bit of a demo on this with package manager assets, is one of the goals with this is to be able to take the projects that you create and basically wrap them up into a deployable package. And the goal of this deployable package is not necessarily to replace what deployment manager or package manager is doing, but it's giving you some extended functionality where you can create an entire version controlled repository of recipes or packages that go in multiple different Marketing Cloud instances, and have a team something up from zero in a matter of seconds, all from one centralized location, without having to, again, kind of understand, has this package been updated? Am I deploying the most recent one? You're deploying it directly from a version controlled centralized source. The other really cool thing that we're looking to do with this, once the package and deploy feature is kind of worked in, is building a way that users can essentially register their packages. It's going to be similar to, my vision is similar to like an NPM or a composer or a package manager, where you can register that package, you can post it to a database, and other users can go in, do a search for specific keywords or package types, things like that, and then essentially download and deploy your package. So it's kind of creating a community around these reusable recipes that can be deployed really anywhere in any instance. And the goal behind this is to be able to go down as far down that dependency rabbit hole as possible, so that if you have data extensions referenced, if you have other content blocks referenced, things like that, Builder will pick those up and include those in your package so that those get deployed as well. So before I get into the demo, just a little bit about what's on the roadmap. So right now we have some level of support for Automation Studio. Um, so with Automation Studio, you're able to clone down an automation by the single automation itself or by a folder that has multiple automations in it. One of the things that I'm trying to incorporate into that as well is being able to, uh, from your local machine, create new SQL and script activities from your command line. So there's a little bit that goes into the Automation Studio side of creating assets that I haven't really tackled just yet. But hopefully that'll come in a fairly soon release. Um, we're working on that initial package command that goes through, gathers all of the dependencies into a JSON object with all the valid API payloads, and then it's going to serialize that so all your dependencies will have references. Um, so without going into too much detail, there will hopefully be a way that the people deploying these packages won't have to go in and update the references with the new asset IDs or paths to those assets. Everything will ideally be taken care of on the builder side, where it'll do all of those changes, all of those updates as it creates the assets. And again, with that package, it's deploying all those dependencies and assets to Marketing Cloud. And then the down the line future aspect of this is going to be that user interface or web application where you can register your packages, you can search for those packages, add links, descriptions, things like that, tags, have a user profile that you can, tie to yourself for those registered packages, and then deploy those packages directly to Marketing Cloud or download a zip file of those packages. So that's kind of what's on the roadmap. So all this stuff is subject to change, but that's kind of what we're thinking thus far for where we're going with Builder, and where we can kind of push this to be kind of a really cool utility for Marketing Cloud development. So if you are interested in checking out Builder as we develop it, there's a couple different ways you can do that. I do Twitch live streams. I try to do them every Tuesday and Thursday, right around 10 o'clock Central Time, which I don't think is ideal for the developers in Australia, but we are working on getting those up on a YouTube channel as well, so that if you're interested in seeing and following along with the progress in real time, all of that will be there. And then there is a website, a landing page for it. It's builder.basetime.io. So that has the documentation, the roadmap. There will be updates on there as we go. And both of those are a really good place to keep an eye on this project. Past these, as Matt said, I'm one of the admins for How to SFMC. I'm on Email Geek Slack. I'm on the developer group Slack. So I am accessible. Please reach out, ask me questions. More than happy to chat. This, other development, anything Marketing Cloud, just feel free to reach out. So before I get into the demo, like I said, if you guys have any questions, please do throw them in chat.
Hey, Tony, we've not had any questions yet. The Q&A is open. You mentioned about the dev group. We host all sorts of things at all sorts of different times. This one, so we're always on. As guys, I think right across everywhere, we're always sort of on, listening and catching up with what's ever going on wherever. One of the pain points in Marketing Cloud is deployment, and I'm sure all of us understand how much of a pain point that is. And things like Package Manager and the hope that exists around that and automating the workflow there really will make a difference for all of us. Marketing Cloud has to be what it is because of what it is. But it is a platform where you can put your hands into it from a marketing perspective, but from a development perspective, when you're building the foundation and all of what we need to have, continuous integration, testing, version control, as you said, this is bundling all that up, this project and projects like it. There's a couple out there. Maybe you could share a bit about those projects as well. I think Accenture have got it, development tools. There's another one there.
Yep.
Are you aware
Absolutely.
of any other efforts at the moment?
So the Accenture Development Tools is a very, very good, comprehensive workflow tool. I've not personally had a chance to really dive into that, so I can't speak to it from a true hands-on experience. But that is definitely, one of the starting projects for, at least in my mind, that really kind of got me thinking about the things that are possible within Marketing Cloud for the development space. So, I know Doug and his team do a lot of great open source projects, and the development tools being one of them. I do know that there's actually another VS Code extension. Let me see if I can pull it up really quick.
I'll put you on the spot here. I know that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. There is.
I'm absolutely fascinated by what's happening at the moment because, like I said, this whole part of Marketing Cloud is a pain point. Everyone feels these are the game changers. And everyone's efforts here are just going to make such a big difference.
Yeah, so there is this project here that if you go into VS Code extensions and you type in SFMC, it is I believe it has syntax highlighting, AMPscript IntelliSense, and it has a feature where you're actually able to do something fairly similar to Builder, where you can connect it directly to your Marketing Cloud instance. It grabs, from my understanding, essentially all of your JSON payloads, all of your assets as temporary VS Code files, where you're able to then make your updates, and then on save, it pushes them to Salesforce Marketing Cloud. I have used this extension previously, and there's a few things that I felt were a little bit tricky with it, and a few things that were missing from it for my personal development workflow. Because of the fact that it's temporary ghost files, essentially, you weren't able to back them up to version control. So it was missing the ability to version control those files from this extension. And then I kind of felt like it could be a little bit more clean with the way that it worked with the files, because it does grab literally everything from your Marketing Cloud instance from Content Builder, which you might not need everything to work. So it got a little bit cumbersome for my personal workflow, but it is definitely a very, very strong effort in the same development workflow space. And it's something that does not really require that command line understanding, I guess, to get up and working with it, which was one of the things that I really, really did like about it, is it was completely integrated into your VS Code interface. It was very easy to use. So yeah, there's definitely there's been a handful of efforts over the last handful of years that kind of started scratching the surface of this type of workflow augmentation, which is really exciting. And again, it's just, yeah, it's one of those things where like I said, when I saw the Accenture Dev Tools, when I've worked with this, it really kind of got my head going of like, how can we make a workflow that is close to the true development workflow for Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and that's kind of what Builder is striving to do.
Yeah. No, the things like, and you mentioned it before, the package managers, like the NPNs, M's, no package manager, and that. It's what's building the community around those basic products where people can contribute just makes such a big difference. There's still no questions in there. And before we do go on, I'm just going to, one of the use cases, just thinking about this, is standing up a business unit with a change. The client wants it wants to see it, but doesn't want to change what their business as usual. So you stand up a business unit with the change, and then we're ready, move it across into the production environment. Yep. I could see that as been a use case. How strong is the documentation? Is evidence of what you do is always part of what you need to provide when you're building solutions. How strong is the documentation with this about the assets that was created? It's sort of paper trail. Be good to have a look at a little bit of that when you go through the demo. Sure. Just for me, I'm curious about that one. And the other one is how closely integrated with Package Manager is Builder? Is it separate or the same? Or like I heard you mention before about the building of JSON assets. Is it using Package Manager as part of the workflow? Or no, I guess they're questions I've got.
Sure.
And I'm really looking forward to the demo. We haven't got any Q&A yet.
Sure.
So
yeah. So if you go to this website here, and it's on the Builder page, I've got it on my Twitter and I believe my LinkedIn profile maybe, or if you go to it's in a handful of different spaces and the GitHub repository, things like that. It has all of the documentation to date here in the README file, which goes over the installation, updating your package, the whole setup. Which I'll go over all this stuff in the demo as well, all the way into what the current requirements for your installed package are. And then it does go into what the current scope and support is. So right now, this is still in some fairly early development stages as far as Builder, where it's at, and where we're looking to really take this. Right now, we have the foundational pieces of it kind of worked out, which is the pulling, pushing, creating assets, all of that understanding of how to really work with the API endpoints to have that workflow supported. So right now, there's two different levels of support for assets. There's fully supported and partially supported assets. Fully supported assets are ones that, as you'll see, come down as HTML files that you're able to actually edit those files and edit those assets as you would inside of Salesforce Marketing Cloud as a content block or as an email or what have you, right? The partially supported assets are assets that don't quite have that full support. They come down as JSON objects straight from what that API pull is. So you can go in and you can still update those assets, but it is through a JSON object and not necessarily a fully editable text file. And there's a couple different reasons for that. In Content Builder, I'm still kind of tackling the block and slot model that Content Builder templates use. I have some fairly lofty goals with how I want to handle that in the long run. but it's a little bit lower priority-wise in the scope of what we're doing for Builder. So right now it comes down as a JSON object. The fully supported objects are the HTML emails, code snippet blocks, and HTML content blocks. And those are the ones that don't really follow that block and slot model. So those are a bit more accessible to make those text HTML files versus the template-based assets. The other part of this is CloudPages and code resource pages, which is a big use case for this. In doing a lot of the digging around, CloudPages and code resource pages are, at the end of the day, content builder assets. So they do show up within the API. So we are able to pull those down. The caveat with those is there's no way to actually publish them from the API, at least not at the moment. So you can go through, you can clone it down, and then you can push it in and update it. The only thing is that you have to go back into Marketing Cloud and hit that publish button to actually make it go live. And that's if you choose to do code on those pages rather than code in a content block and then use AMPscript to push it to that page. So with Content Builder, we're actually also able to create new assets on the fly for all of the supported, the fully supported asset types. So you can create an HTML block, code snippet block, and an HTML email, completely fresh without there being an asset within Marketing Cloud, as well as folders as well. And then recently we've added in the project initiation for Content Builder. Haven't tackled it for Automation Studio yet, but with the project initiation, if you think of frameworks like Vue, React, things like that, where you can essentially scaffold and start a project locally and then push it to your hosting server. We worked that into Builder, where you can do a builder init. It's going to create the files and the initial folders that you need to use Builder and create new assets within Marketing Cloud. And then you can push everything in two commands. You can add all your files and push as many assets as you need to into Marketing Cloud with one command. So if you think about setting up a CloudPage project, for example, where if you're like me, I like to modularize everything, makes it easier to manage and troubleshoot. Those assets can get 10, 20 assets, rather than creating every single asset in the platform and then cloning it down, doing your editing. You can initiate and scaffold an entire project and push all your assets, all your folders in one go. So that's pretty cool. And then for Automation Studio, we are setting it on extending the support of that. So again, it has the fully supported assets as well as the partially supported assets. So fully supported are your queries and your script activities. And then everything else comes down as JSON objects. Automation Studio is a little bit different because with some of the definitions and things like that, there's really not a good visual representation for them. So it kind of just makes sense to leave them as the JSON objects. And right now, pulling those objects down are more so for version controlling them and having them as references. You are able to update most of them. But again, you're doing it through that JSON object. And there's currently no support for new assets just yet for Automation Studio. That's hopefully a very soon update once we work out some additional features. So kind of along what you were asking of like how the package and deploy will kind of compare with package manager. Um, that is unfortunately kind of a big question mark as far as what's supported, how it'll handle dependencies and things like that. We're in the very early stages of gathering those dependencies and um, getting those dependencies to deploy. So we are working on that. That's the next major release that we're working towards. But it's a little bit too early to say how it's going to stack up against Package Manager. Um, One thing that I will say, and I don't want to speak poorly or speak negatively about Salesforce Marketing Cloud or Package Manager and the efforts that they have been pushing, because they've made a lot of strides with Package Manager from where it initially came from. But personally, as I've attempted to test Package Manager over the last handful of years, I've not had too much success with it in deploying a full automation, for example. It'll deploy most of the dependencies and then it won't deploy the actual automation. So there's still that manual step that needs to happen, at least in my experience. So I'm kind of hoping to circumvent some of that. And then the other aspect of it is that, again, we're trying to build that community of recipes and deployable packages amongst the community and kind of really bolster that code sharing mentality. Um, so that's kind of where it stands side by side with Package Manager at the moment. Did that kind of answer your question, Matt?
No, it does, and I sort of echo your sentiments that package managers come a long way. And in a sense, package manager is just another one of the tools in the same space. Yep. It's trying to solve the same problem. So, looking forward to the demo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to get into with before I get into the demo is security. So, like one of the things that I definitely wanted to take into account with this tool is, you know, I've worked at agencies, I've worked brand side. You know, if credentials get out, then things can go awry in a handful of different ways, really, really bad, negative ways. So I didn't want credentials just sitting on a local machine, unencrypted, just sitting there. So we did implement a security feature around this where everything is encrypted. It creates an encryption key that is unique to your local machine. And it uses that to encrypt and decrypt the API credentials as they are at rest. So when they are sitting in your machine, there is no unencrypted raw API client ID and secrets just kind of laying there. They are encrypted with some fairly substantial encryption methods. I believe it's very similar, if not the same, encryption algorithm that, for example, Postman uses when you're storing environment variables there. So just kind of put that out there as well. And then if you read through the documentation, there's also all of the commands and kind of how they're used and what you are doing with them. So, all right. So with that, I will jump into a demo here really quick. And let's do, so I've got three things that I can run through and share. So the first one I will run through, I'll run through configuration really quick just to show kind of how that flow works. Just to show how easy configuring an instance is. And one of the really cool things about this is from the same command line interface. So from here, you're actually able to configure multiple different Marketing Cloud instances. So if you work at an agency, you can, or if you work at a brand that has multiple different Marketing Cloud instances, you can configure multiple instances from one centralized command line. You don't have to switch between projects or anything like that. So to set up a new instance for Builder, the command is BLDR config -n, and this will initiate a prompt here. And you can give it your instance name. It'll ask you for the parent MID. It'll ask you for the client ID. It'll ask you for the secret. And then the authentication base URI. So this will go through, it tests the API configuration, and then it will also gather all of the business units within that Marketing Cloud instance. So then if you do builder config -l, you could actually list all of your instances that you have created, and you can builder config S for set, and then set Avigate or set SFMCDG as your instance, and it'll change your context of your command line based on what instance you have set. So then you can also go through and remove the configurations that you no longer need. You can update them. You have full control over those configurations. And you can even go through and list your details to see what instance it is, what the parent MID is, all your business units, and it gives you the first 5 characters of your ID and secret, just so you can identify them. And then you can do whatever you need to do with that. So then with Content Builder, you can do search. So there is a search command. And then for the search and the clone command, there are Content Builder and Automation Studio context flags. So it's --CB, and then you can search by either -F for folders or -A for assets if you only need a single asset. And then you can put in any search term that you want. So we'll do SSJS, see what I've got folder-wise for SSJS. It gives you the name, the ID of the folder, and a little bit of context around that folder's ID and that folder's location. So you can see this one is right in Content Builder. These are down the line. I'll grab this guy here. And then I can do a builder clone. And then again, it needs that context flag. So --CB. I'm cloning a folder, so -F. And then paste that folder ID in the command and hit enter. And then what it's going to do is it's going to go through, it grabs all of these subfolders that are underneath that folder recursively. So any folder that's nested will get picked up. And then based on those folder IDs, it will grab all of the assets and create them in the correct space. So what we're essentially doing is taking the exact structure you have in Salesforce Marketing Cloud and bringing it down to your local machine, so you have access to all of those files. And it, like I said, it creates your new folders. It creates all of your, this is a code snippet or a server-side JavaScript that I have in a code snippet block. It has HTML block here, and then your full email comes through as a text file. So then I can go into this new file HTML here, the comments. I can save this file here, and then I can do a builder add, and then just like a standard Git workflow, you can do builder add period, and it'll add every single file to your stash, or you can drill down to that specific file. So you can do content builder. It all has tab completion like you have in your command line. So you don't have to write out your entirety of your file path. So here it's new file.html. So what that's going to do is that's going to add, I have that there. So let's clear that out. So I have a file that I've added earlier that I don't want to add to my update. So if you do builder -c, it'll actually clear out your stash. So then you can re-add that one file in there. And then you can do a builder, so BLDR push. Same commands as you would use for a Git workflow. And then that's going to update your new file in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So now if I jump over to Marketing Cloud and I go into email and content, and if I can find the file in here, so you can see there's a lot of test files in here. So I did the new file. You can see that it's updated today. And it has the SFMC DG comment. So making that update locally, pushing it into Marketing Cloud, all from that command line for Content Builder. And then once I'm happy with how this is updated, all that kind of stuff, or if I just need to version control it, since it is tied directly to a repository, I can do a git add period to add everything. Git commit, and then git push, and now that's backed up to version control. So now, as you can see, pushing files into Marketing Cloud, pushing files to your Git repo, all in the same breath, all from the same command line, all from the same workflow. So the really cool thing about this is it's based on your specific projects that you need to work with. It's not tied directly to a whole team of users. So if you as an individual want to use this for your workflow, it's completely disconnected from anything, any other outside dependencies or requirements. You can use it for your personal workflow and then jump straight into it, which is really cool. So I'll close this one out and I will open up my automation studio. And for this, so for this one, it has the same kind of workflow as Content Builder does. So you would do builder, search, and then AS for Automation Studio. And I will do -A. So I'm searching for a specific asset. I have a builder automation here. This one works off of the object ID here. This also gives you that the status for it is active, that it's ready, and the last date that it was modified. So then you can do builder, clone, automation studio asset, type in the object ID here. That should bring down your automation studio dependencies here. So this one has quite a bit more. And as you can see with the tracking extracts, the file imports, the filters, the automation itself, those all come down, as I was saying, as your JSON objects that are kind of for reference. You can go through and you can update your tracking extract through the JSON if you so choose to. I believe the same thing with your file imports. Filters I'm working on because it's split into the filter shell and then the definition itself. So I'm working on that piece of it as well. But then you can also go in and you have your SQL query, the same as you see it in the platform. You can update it, modify it right here in your text editor, and it has the SQL syntax because it is a SQL file. And then the same thing with your script activities. So you can go through and update query definitions, script activities, all from your text editor, push them through the same way as your, as I showed you with the content builder with the add and the push. And then the user initiated send is also fairly interesting because the send object, the send definition itself comes down as a JSON. But what I've done is we've worked in the content builder folder here as well. And it will pull in that email that is referenced in your automation in your send definition. So you can go through and update your emails based on that automation. So if there's multiple different send definitions, it will go through and pull all of those email assets, and you can update your emails that are in your automations right there. And it'll push through the same way that a content builder asset will be updated, like I just showed you. So it comes down a little bit different, but it does have the ability to edit and update those assets from the command line as well. And then again, it's the same thing. You can go through and push it to GitHub, Bitbucket, AWS, whatever Git provider you are tied into for that version control. So then the last thing that I wanted to kind of go over and demo for you guys is the ability to initiate a complete project from scratch from your local machine into Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And this is something that I think is really, really cool because, like I said, I tend to modularize most of my development within Salesforce Marketing Cloud, especially when I'm doing CloudPages. So I do a lot of different content blocks, different separation of functions and things like that. So with this, you're able to do BLDR init, and it's going to ask you for a project name. And then what that's going to do is it's going to create your content builder folder. It's going to create a folder for your project, and it's going to create 2 blank files here. And then just for the sake of pulling in some actual files, let me grab a folder here. So in here, if you go through and you create all of your folders, all of your assets, everything you need to initiate this project, you can then turn around and do BLDR add period. So adding everything that is within this project that would be associated with Salesforce Marketing Cloud. it's going to ask you for another piece of input. So it's going to go down the line and say, for this asset, what would you like to create it as? So we didn't want to be opinionated around, you're creating a new asset, it's going to get created as a code snippet block. So you have the ability to say, this is an HTML email, this is a code snippet block, or whatever that supported asset is. So I'm going to create all of these just as code snippet blocks. And then that's going to add everything to the backend stash that we've created. And then builder push, and that should go through and push all of those folders, all of those assets directly into Marketing Cloud. So now if I go into Marketing Cloud and I go into my content, there is a folder, SFMC demo create, SSJS classes, and I've created 5 code snippet blocks and 2 folders within 2 commands from the command line from a fully locally scaffolded project. So if you think about reusability of assets and moving with more speed, rather than having to go into create, content block, code snippet, go through the WYSIWYG, paste or create your asset, copy and paste your asset in here, save it, do the same thing 5 times, it builds a lot of efficiencies that you don't have otherwise. And that's really the goal of it, is building these efficiencies to, push your Marketing Cloud workflow past what Marketing Cloud is able to offer you. So that's kind of what Builder is currently. That's kind of where we're going. And, I think it's really, really exciting where this tool and this application, this utility can really push that development workflow for Marketing Cloud users.
All I can say is awesome, and love it. Thanks, Tony. Just sitting there looking at it, going, "Wow!" No, it's a really good effort. Nice bit of code that you put together and process. Obvious question. There's no more Q&A. I guess we need to close off in about 2 minutes' time. If you want more information, we'll put links and everything in the email that comes out after the event, plus the recording, of course. If people want to get more involved in the project, what do they do?
Yeah, so if you want to get more involved in the project, the entire thing is completely open source. So we have a Git repository that I'll include the link. I'll send you the link for the email that goes out. But everything is open source. So if you want to contribute, fork the repository, make an update, put in a pull request, and let's collaborate. If there's features that you want to see added, please reach out. We'll have a conversation. We'll figure out best ways to move forward with them, or if it fits into the vision of Builder, and we can collaborate for sure. Bugs, if you're working on Builder and there's a bug that you run into, please do open an issue. We don't know if there's bugs or if there's issues with the software we're putting out unless those issues are raised and submitted. There's an issue template that you can go through and, fill this out, be as detailed as you can, and we'll try and be as responsive as we can. So, there's multiple different ways to get involved if you're looking to get involved. Otherwise, like I said, I'm on just about every email related Slack group that we can think of, between How to SFMC, Email Geeks, the developer group one. There's a whole bunch of Slacks that you can reach out to me and chat. Active on Twitter. I'm doing the live streaming on Twitch Tuesday and Thursdays. I'm out there. So feel free to hang out and geek out with me.
Sure. All right, Tony. Thanks everyone for joining in. And once again, thank you, Tony, so much for today. We look forward to catching up with everyone soon.
Yeah,
Oh, no. It's the other way around. All right. Cool. All right. Thank you.